Welcome to one of the most disturbing cases recorded in the history of Louisiana. Before we begin, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact time you're listening to this narration. We're interested to know which places and what times of day or night these documented accounts reach. It began with a simple notice in the St. Charles Herald on April 14, 1847. A small column nestled between advertisements for cotton gins and medicinal tonics read, "Missing, Mrs. Evelyn Duval, wife of plantation owner Gerard Duval, last seen on the evening of April 10th. Reward offered for information leading to her safe return." What seemed at first to be a routine disappearance would unravel into one of Louisiana's most disturbing cases, one that official records would later scrub clean, but whose echoes still resonate through the cypress swamps of St. James Parish. The Duval Plantation stood proud along the Mississippi River, a two-story white mansion with 12 imposing columns stretching across its facade. On the surface, it represented everything the antebellum South celebrated: wealth, stability, and a rigid social order. According to parish records, Gerard Duval had acquired the plantation in 1839 following the death of his father. The ledgers from the First Bank of New Orleans show he had expanded the property considerably, purchasing adjoining land and increasing his workforce to over 100 enslaved persons by 1845. Evelyn had arrived from Charleston in 1844, the daughter of a wealthy shipping merchant who had arranged the marriage to strengthen business connections. The couple's wedding announcement in the New Orleans Picayune described her as a woman of extraordinary beauty and refined accomplishment, certain to grace Louisiana society with her presence. Surviving letters from Evelyn to her cousin in Virginia, discovered in a family collection in 1952, paint a different picture. "The air here suffocates," she wrote 3 months after her arrival. "The house feels like a museum where I'm both exhibit and visitor." Parish records indicate that Henry Carter had been purchased at the New Orleans slave market in January of 1846. His bill of sale, later recovered from the Duval estate papers during an academic survey in 1964, listed him as male, approximately 26 years of age, literate, skilled in carpentry, of sound body and temperament. A rare notation at the bottom, presumably in Gerard Duval's handwriting, specified to serve in house and manage library organization. What followed was a period of apparent calm. The plantation's accounting books from 1846 show increasing profits from sugarcane production. Gerard Duval's name appears frequently in parish meeting minutes, where he advocated for stricter controls on the movement of enslaved people between plantations. A journal belonging to Margaret Fontaine, wife of a neighboring plantation owner, mentions Evelyn at various social gatherings, describing her as quiet to the point of invisibility, though her eyes seemed to take in everything. The journal entry from Christmas of 1846 notes that Mrs. Duval seemed unusually distracted during the sermon and excused herself before the meal was served. The winter of 1846 gave way to spring, and with it came the first disruptions to the plantation's carefully maintained order. A ledger entry from March 3rd notes disciplinary action required for Henry C. found in mistress's private sitting room without permission. A subsequent entry from March 21st indicates H.C. reassigned to field duties as punishment. Yet a curious counter-entry dated March 28th returns him to household duties, with the notation, "At mistress's insistence, H.C. returned to library management." On April 10, 1847, multiple events converged. According to the Overseer's daily report, Gerard Duval departed for New Orleans on business, expected to return in 3 days. The weather journal kept by the plantation manager noted heavy rains beginning at sunset, continuing through the night. The last documented sighting of Evelyn was by the cook, who later told investigators she had requested tea be brought to the library at approximately 8 in the evening. By morning, both Evelyn Duval and Henry Carter were gone. What followed was a search unprecedented in its scale for St. James Parish. Gerard Duval returned from New Orleans and immediately organized search parties that combed the surrounding swamps and checked every road leading away from the plantation. The New Orleans Daily Crescent reported on April 17th that 50 men with dogs traversed the wilderness in search of Mrs. Duval, who is feared to have been abducted by a runaway slave. Notices were posted as far north as Natchez and as far east as Mobile. The official narrative quickly solidified around abduction. "Respected planter's wife taken by slave," read the headline in the Baton Rouge Gazette on April 21st. The article quoted Gerard Duval claiming that Henry had shown signs of instability and had developed an unhealthy fixation on Mrs. Duval due to their shared interest in literature. A reward notice published in multiple Southern newspapers offered $1,000 for the return of Mrs. Evelyn Duval and the capture, dead or alive, of the Negro man Henry who has taken her against her will. Yet contradictions emerged almost immediately. A statement given to parish authorities by Rachel, an enslaved woman who served as Evelyn's lady's maid, noted that mistress had been packing a small valise for several days, adding items gradually so as not to draw attention. This statement was stricken from official records, but preserved in the private notes of Sheriff Thomas Wilkinson, discovered among his effects after his death in 1861. More tellingly, an inventory conducted of Evelyn's belongings revealed the absence of not only clothes and personal items, but also of several books from the library, including copies of Voltaire and Rousseau that parish records show had been ordered from New Orleans the previous autumn. Gerard Duval insisted these items had been taken by Henry as further evidence of his crime. As the search extended into its second week, a riverboat captain reported seeing a white woman and a Negro man boarding his vessel at a small landing 10 miles downriver from the Duval plantation on the morning of April 11th. According to his statement, they had purchased passage to New Orleans, where they disembarked and disappeared into the city. When questioned about their behavior, the captain reported that they spoke little, but sat closely together, and the woman wore a dark veil throughout the journey. When asked directly if the woman appeared to be under duress, the captain's response was, reportedly, "No more than any woman traveling with a man." The trail went cold in New Orleans. Despite extensive searches of the city, particularly in areas known for harboring runaways and free people of color, no further confirmed sightings emerged. A rumor circulated that they had boarded a vessel bound for Haiti, but shipping records from the period show no passengers matching their descriptions. As weeks stretched into months, the public narrative began to shift. The Picayune published an article in June suggesting that sources close to the Duval household indicate the marriage had been troubled from its inception, and hinting at cruel treatment that may have driven Evelyn to flee. Gerard Duval responded with threats of legal action, and subsequent coverage retreated to the abduction narrative. By autumn, the case had largely disappeared from public discussion. Gerard Duval sold the plantation in December of 1847 and returned to France, where his family had roots. Parish records show he cited unhappy memories as his reason for departure. The plantation house itself burned to the ground in 1849, attributed to a lightning strike. Local rumors suggested arson, though no investigation was ever conducted. The case might have remained buried in obscurity had it not been for the discovery of a curious document in 1958. During renovation of an old townhouse in the French Quarter, workers found a sealed tin box hidden within a wall cavity. Inside was a journal, water damaged but partially legible, bearing the inscription, "Property of E.D." The journal was turned over to Tulane University historians who dated it to the mid-19th century based on the paper composition and ink analysis. Only fragments of the journal remain readable, but they paint a startling picture at odds with the official record. One entry, presumed to date from early 1846, reads, "G treats his books with more tenderness than he has ever shown me. The new man H understands their value as well and speaks of authors I had not expected anyone here to know." A later entry continues, "H and I discussed Rousseau today when G was occupied with the mill machinery. He has learned through paths I cannot imagine, acquiring knowledge despite every barrier erected against it." By winter of 1846, the tone shifts. "The way G looks at H when he thinks I do not notice, with suspicion, with malice, I fear what may come." And later, "G struck me today when I protested H's reassignment to the fields, said I had become too familiar with the slaves. If only he knew the thoughts that now occupy my mind." The final legible entry, undated but presumably from early April 1847, is the most revealing. "We have agreed. When G goes to New Orleans, the riverboat at dawn. H says there are people in the city who can help us reach Philadelphia. I take only what cannot be replaced. My heart races with fear and something else. Perhaps the first true hope I have felt since coming to this dreadful place." The journal's discovery sparked renewed interest in the case among historians, specializing in antebellum Southern society. A 1962 article in the Journal of Southern History suggested the Duval case represented a rarely documented instance of voluntary escape across racial boundaries, though this interpretation remained controversial. In 1964, research conducted in Philadelphia City Archives uncovered a marriage certificate dated October 3, 1847, between an Ellen Davis and Harold Carter. The certificate noted both parties were free colored persons, a common designation used by light-skinned black individuals or interracial couples attempting to live in northern cities. The officiating minister's private records, preserved by his church, included a cryptic note. The woman speaks with a southern accent despite claiming Charleston birth. Husband protective, watches door throughout ceremony. Fear evident. Tax records show that Harold Carter established a small carpentry business in Philadelphia's 7th Ward, an area known for its free black community. The business operated until 1853, when city directories indicate the Carters